Sarah and I, when we decided to be musicians, it was sort of in our last year of high school. We'd been playing music casually for friends, making little demo tapes, and as things started to heat up and more people seemed interested in it, we were really thrilled and excited because I think both of us didn't really necessarily have a passion outside of music. And although music hadn't seemed like an option for a job, it was the one thing that we probably focused the most energy into. So when people ask that question, even though they've been asking it literally since we started music, it was like, well, if you weren't doing music, what would you do? I still do not have a good answer for that. But I do think that at this point, we've banked 14 years worth of energy into music, so I'm sure it would be something related to the music business. We both have showed interest in production and writing for other bands and projects, and I think we have a pretty good comprehensive knowledge of the industry, so we could probably get a job at a record label or a management company. So I feel we're pretty employable, we're very responsible, we run a business, so something in that area, I think. But I'm hoping that we just can stay in music so I do not have to come up with a backup plan.
I think my biggest fear is that we've never worked for anyone. We've always been the bosses. We even at 18 years old when we first started touring, we had to hire someone who could carry the merch and sell the merch while we were on stage and drive the car sometimes. And so in a strange way, we've really, our entire skill set is being the boss. We've always run the business and employed people. So whenever I think about transitioning out of, a music career as a musician or as a band leader, I now naturally gravitate towards jobs or roles where I would still be the boss. I just can't imagine going somewhere and being like, okay, just point me in the direction. What do you want me to do for you? I think I'm too bossy now, effectively bossy. So it's so I'm terrified to think that I would have to work for someone. I just don't think I could do it. I'd start my own landscaping company. I think mow some lawns, whatever. I definitely think that this record has a sonically cohesive feeling to it, and I'm not entirely certain that it has as much to do with the songwriting as it does to do with the production. There was an emphasis on making sure that the songs would work together, especially because we were working with multiple producers. We definitely felt that the songs needed to feel like they thematically tied together, and in terms of the instruments that we were using or the musicians that we were using, we really tried to keep as few variables as possible. So for example, 8 of the 10 tracks on the record, it's the same drummer. So even though Tegan may have a natural inclination to write songs with a certain type of arrangement or a certain type of arc, it's the same people who are processing the music and playing on them, so the dynamics feel really similar. So, and I do think that on our last record, for example, there were a couple of almost what I would call rock or punk rock songs that Tegan brought to the album, and then my songs tended to sort of stray a little bit into the more weird or eclectic, almost pop genre. So this record, I think we were a little bit closer to both trying to write more traditional pop songs. But I'm so excited that people are feeling like this is a really cohesive effort, because we spent a lot of time making sure that it was. It would have been annoying if people had been like, so it's just all over the map. We would have been like, really? Shit,
A couple days ago in preparation for this, they were talking about games, and it got us talking about all of our favorite video games and computer games over the years. And we're part of the 80s generation, so I remember our first computer when we were 7 years old, and it was completely useless. I mean, there's absolutely nothing that you could do on it other than pretty much play very basic games. But I remember the thrill, just the absolute thrill of Frogger, rushing home from school to play on Frogger, and the impact that
Super Mario was.
But that was the thing. But it was Atari
crazy.
And those basic games in our childhood, and so
yeah.
Then to be prepubescence and getting a Super Mario game, getting Nintendo and Super Nintendo and the evolution of games, we were truly a part of that generation that went from having nothing to having this best friend, this entertainment system that lived in your room with you, and you could get up on Saturday mornings and entertain yourself, and it was not expected. It was novel. It was this truly exciting time. So and
I feel like I have post-traumatic stress still from playing Super Mario, you would sit next to, we had a best friend that the three of us would play video games. And I can remember whoever had the controller, when you would get, when you would die on a level in Super Mario, you would be like, oh, and you would like hit each other. Like it was just like the stress and trauma release.
I don't remember that at all.
Oh my God, we used to hit each other, and it was like, we were just these dumb kids, but I still feel like I have post-traumatic stress when I see Super Mario. Like I'm just like, what level am I on?
It was definitely a huge part of our childhood. But then I remember, like, as an adult, I sort of missed. Sarah went through, like, she got a PlayStation and became really obsessed with all these games, and she can talk about what her favorite games were. But I kind of missed all of that. Like, I used to play like Crazy Taxi. That was like my thing. But like, I was kind of like anti-video game for a long time. No television in my house, like that sort of thing. And then about 4.5 years ago, someone bought me a Wii. And I just was like, became like really obsessed, like totally like avoiding going out with people, like playing, like Shaun White snowboarding. That was like my big game, and like got a balance board, and like, like basically became obsessed with Shaun White, and like look, at photos of him online, and just thought to myself, like, I could probably get into like a sport, maybe that could be my hobby. And, so things really changed. And then recently I got really kind of obsessed with like all those like SimCity games, and like, things like, Cityville and those kinds of things. Like just the idea like that video games have kind of gotten to a point now where you can actually learn and you can build things, and that you can, sort of seek an evolution through this like fantasy world and stuff. So yeah. Sarah she's more into Grand Theft Auto, though. Her fantasy world is more about money and violence. Obviously.
Oh my goodness.
Groovy Kind of Love, Phil Collins.
Which is weird.
Cyndi Lauper, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Those would be my two choices for childhood.
I was actually thinking the other day that, this is a very difficult question, because we grew up in a family where music was always on. It was in the car, it was in my grandparents' house. My grandparents had a bar in their basement, and they had a jukebox, and it was like, it wasn't necessarily the music we were hearing at home, but we had just a strong affection for Patsy Cline and, Hank Williams, as we did for Sinead O'Connor and Kate Bush. So, we didn't realize at the time, we're kids, you don't really delineate between what is cool and kid-friendly and what is adult-friendly or grandparent-friendly. We just liked it all. So, it's a really tough question. But the other day I heard someone talking about Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms, and I was like, I think that's a really profound record for us, because it was at an age still where everything we were listening to was what our parents liked. And I remember that record was all over the radio. It was, my dad played it constantly, and it's still a song that is a staple. I think I probably don't go, I don't get into a car or get into a radio-friendly environment without hearing something from that record, whether it's like I Want My MTV or, whatever it is, So Far Away. I feel like I hear that record all the time. So there's a million songs and a million records, but
it shaped your childhood.
Lately I've been thinking a lot about how much Dire Straits permeated my childhood. It really did. It's crazy. Actually, we talked about.
So look at how she turned out.
We talked about actually having Mark Knopfler, like approaching him to play some guitar. We obviously didn't. We made a pop record, and we didn't end up playing a lot of guitar on this record. But I actually used him as a reference point. Like, how cool would it be to get him to play some guitar on our record?
We definitely are very well known amongst certain industry and other bands, and even our fan culture. Like, it's very well known that Sarah and I are very big on rules and structure, being Virgos, and that hasn't changed. And definitely from record to record, the rules increase. It seems, rules from the past have been things like we don't have any hard liquor on the buses or backstage, because I just feel like it weathers you and it just makes you grumpy. So I just feel like it's fun when you're drinking it, but not necessarily fun the next day. So you're welcome to go and drink hard alcohol as long as it's not backstage, because it's just, it's like, we call it Christmas Day. Like, it's not Groundhog Day because every day is different, but every day on the road is kind of like Christmas Day. It's a lot of socializing and, sort of like grazing the like food table, and then finally at the end of the day there's something to look forward to. So, but on this record, we actually, I think the thing that's really significant to point out is we've actually taken away a lot of rules. So a lot of the structure that we've had in place has sort of stopped. It feels like we've gotten to an age maybe where we all are much more responsible. There's a lot more there's a lot more maturity out there on the road. You know, there's no need to tell people like you need to be in bed by a reasonable hour, or you can't be coming on and off the bus. And
well, that's probably indicative of the age group that we've now started hiring to work with us.
So it's like less rules. So like things have finally, we've hit a point, we've hit that tipping point, and now we're heading into territory where it's like, well, maybe we don't need to laminate the rules and make everyone carry them around with them. So a little more flexibility out there.
It's really funny because I feel like gaming culture, what's really popular and significant, are games that we're not necessarily drawn to, which I know is a bit of a stereotype and, you know, whatever, but like I don't play any war games. I don't play any games where I'm like blowing people's heads off or like doing anything like that. So it's like, it's not as, like I don't know that we're as up to date on like the characters that people really like these days. But I do have a funny story. I had never played Portal before. I didn't understand that game at all. But I ended up singing the theme. I did like the guy that wrote the song, the theme song for Portal. He asked me if I would do like a human version of the song and sing it actually and do it. And in learning about that game, I thought that character, like that she is amazing, like this kind of sociopathic, like sort of like, and I was like, I can totally get behind this lady, like, you know, like I just thought that,
with you.
yeah, like it was such a funny character because I think for us, like we associate a lot of gaming characters and people with our childhood, as we were saying before. So it's like the cartoonish kind of like Super Mario and the princess and the Toad and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I think that was my first introduction into like some of the grown-up characters and how like absolutely there's a ton of depth to these people. Their whole worlds are figured out, and their whole background and their character studies and everything. So that was like my first introduction, and I don't know what it says about me that I was drawn into a sociopathic, killing, murdering robot, you know, type woman. I don't know what that says about me. It might be me. It could be the people I like. I don't know. It doesn't. I don't know.
You know, I think going back to sort of talking about the music that really shaped our childhood, I think there were like massive, massive influences that have shaped us, you know, as grown up, you know, adult artists, and, you know, everything from David Bowie to Cyndi Lauper, like those characters, because they truly were characters. I mean, you know, back then it was not good enough just to put out music. You know, people really had a very, very like 3D image, and I think that like David Bowie, I just remember having a profound effect on us because he was in Labyrinth, right? So this movie that was aimed at children, and he had this like very strange but very like fun music. So although we didn't understand the themes as children, you know, it was what our parents loved. Our dad loved, you know, David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust, and so we were like dancing around in the house listening to him and associating like childhood love and affection with him, and then he was this like crazy, like, you know, incredibly hard to understand, you know, as a child character in Labyrinth, our favorite movie. And so I think about that, and I feel like that, like, you know, really impacted me. And I feel like, you know, as an artist now looking back on someone like David Bowie, I mean, it's still
Did you write a song that you wish
so
you'd
profound?
written?
Everything. Well, this is like Labyrinth. I mean, like the movie, every song on that. I mean, I just watched it recently in a park with my dad outdoors as an adult, and I knew every word. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, like my dad and I all wrapped up in blankets watching this movie, singing along. So I went and found the soundtrack on vinyl, and, you know, I just wish that I could be David Bowie from that era.